I wanted to ask you basically, how do you stay creative? Like, what is your process of like being creative and creating content basically? Because I've found it tricky myself, but like, what's your process like?
Yeah, that's a great question. Let me see if I have that book laying around. Hold on. Here it is. Yeah, I have it on my shelf right here. One of my good friends, he has like 1 million followers on Instagram, super popular content creator. He gifted me this book right here. It's called Steal Like an Artist.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all about how any kind of art that you ever do, whether it's creating content or just anything, literally anything as it pertains to the artistic field, is based off of something else. Whatever idea you have, whatever thing that you contrive of, is based off of something else. So as long as you can understand that, then finding content, finding finding how to express yourself through whatever artistic medium is literally just looking for what you like and then recreating it, but in your own voice. And so that's exactly kind of what I do. I just, if it's for social media, I'm surfing social media and it's just like doing research. It's like I'm writing for a paper or something. I just scroll and look for things that are like, oh yeah, that's doable. And I like that. I could see my audience, or I could see myself liking it. So how do I make it my own?
Yeah, of course. And sometimes there's like those things are trends, right? But I'm assuming that sometimes you put your own spin on things and go, okay, how does this relevant to me and my brand essentially? Like how does that work in terms of like picking and choosing? Or do you just look at something and go, hey, I want to do that. Like that'll be fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's more of a vibe thing. Like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Like this looks fun. I definitely think from a branding perspective, I am a little bit more careful with just like picking and choosing like really random things. Like if it's something that pertains to like a lot of profanity or nudity or whatever, like that's not really my brand. And I think from a business perspective, it's actually really smart to not make it your brand, because at a certain stage when you do want to work with other brands, or even like, because everything exists on social media, right? Like it's there forever and you don't know who's going to see your profile. Literally don't. It could be your next boss. It could be your next employer. So I try to keep it like with that in mind of like, okay, let's make it so that I could still be like edgy or like stuff that I think is like funny, and it could vary, but like I'm not going to cross certain lines. And I feel like those lines are loosely drawn, but like it's more of like a intuition type thing.
Yeah, it's smart.
Yeah.
And you don't want to like censor yourself and obviously like mute your own voice. Like you want your own voice to come through, but then again, also
exactly,
you got to be careful sometimes with things that you want to say and things that you want to do. I understand that. That's cool. And how did you start doing this? Like, what was the first initial like foray into social media and creating content?
Oh yeah, that's great. There's so much to unpack because I feel like it's a whole like journey, like a whole story that I can tell.
Please tell it.
Okay.
I'm genuinely curious to know, because I find it so interesting. Like everyone has their own start and like what inspired them to initially get going.
Oh, totally. Man, I think just before I start the story, before I start where it all kind of began, I want to preface a metaphor. I think that everything happens for a reason, and every action has a reaction. And as cliche as that sounds, it's true. The butterfly effect exists. From the moment that I decided to do one thing, even though it's not what I set out to do, it's created sort of a domino effect that has led me to another thing, to another thing, to another thing, and they all correlate, but they maybe don't correlate directly or even in a way that I have intended to. So I started off actually wanting to make short films, and I wanted to be a director, and I wanted to literally like make movies. And this was when I was like 16, 17. And so I got really into like just like understanding, like I wanted to go to film school, I wanted to go to like USC, I want to go to UCLA, study film, be in LA. and like just like make movies. I didn't know what that would look like, but that was like what I wanted to do. And from there, I kind of realized that like, well, if I wanted to be a director, all I'm really doing is telling actors what to do. So I'm like, okay, it's my best interest to learn what acting is because that's important for making movies. And so I started to dive into acting, and I totally fell into like a hole of like, oh my God, this is what I want to do. Like I want to be an actor. And so that's how my acting journey began. And for the longest time, for years, I was pursuing acting. I was like just in acting class. All I cared about was like acting, and like I did film here and there, but like I didn't think about it as much as acting. And everything I did was like acting. And then when I got to LA, I was like looking for a job because this is when I just graduated and I was like unemployed, didn't know what to do. And the social media company that does like skits was actually looking for content creators. They were looking for people to be like in these skits, like reoccurring, like one of like the people who are actually really making these skits. And at first I thought it was an acting gig, but then I found out very quickly in the interview that it's like they were looking for someone who was super proficient in like editing, filming, all of these things. It was much more of like almost like a directing gig than it was an acting gig. Sometimes I just felt like I was like in it just to like be in it for a second, but really my main focus on all of those things was directing. And so this YouTube page is called Smile Squad, by the way. I am a Smile Squad creator. I don't know if you've heard of Smile Squad or if you've seen Smile Squad content. Oh man, yeah, we are super viral on Facebook and YouTube. Like we literally just make viral, relatable videos, and so that's like the whole model of what we do, awesome. Like of how we create content. Yeah, and a lot of it is just like really like I shoot everything myself, and it looks like people are filming it. It looks like we have a crew and like a team, but it's really just me. And I felt like all of those things kind of trickled into the stars really aligning for me and getting this gig. And from there, like my social media blew up because I was creating for a page that had over 10 million followers across all platforms. And so really quickly, like my social media accounts and engagement and followers just went just skyrocketed. So now I'm at a point where I'm creating both that content and my own content. I want to find my own voice because I share a voice with the company I work with. But also I want to create my own voice and my own brand specifically. And on top of that, I also want to do acting. I want to make sure that me as an actor, that side of the business is also a separate thing that I work on. I would say even more so than all of the other ones, like to combine together, all of my energy is dispersed between these three things. So that's how I got into it. I got into it not wanting to do social media at all. And I happened to fall into a position where it was like, you needed to have all the experience of the traditional film and acting and like knowing how to work a camera and composition and all of these things, but for social media. And once I dove into that world, I started just learning really fast about how social media works because the guy who started it, he's like a pro at social media. So
what like was that process of like getting that job? Was there like a traditional job ad that you saw and you applied for, or how did that first interview process go to getting that first job in social media?
Oh my gosh, yeah, that is it. It's so funny to think about because I feel like it's like it doesn't seem real. It doesn't seem like legit. The first interview that I had was literally getting boba with like the boss. Like I literally went and we reached out to each other. And we're like, hey, I'm looking for this position, like not knowing how big the position is and how much it would affect my life.
Yeah.
But I knew it was going to affect my life a lot, and I really wanted to do it. So but it was like, hey, let's just get boba and like hang out and talk, get to know each other. So we literally just got boba in Little Tokyo in Los Angeles, hung out, talked, and like really vibed. And like I had a lot of great ideas that he loved. And so we just started shooting videos together, and pretty soon I was brought on as a full-time creator for the page.
So you reached out to each other. So he like saw you somewhere, reached out to you, and then you just went and got.
Yeah, it was, well, he had put out like a job call, but it was much more like, it was like on his story. It was on like some small Facebook pages.
Right.
But because we didn't they weren't looking to cast an actor. They were looking, it was like a job interview than like an audition, because you would be doing so much more than just acting.
Yeah.
So they were really looking more, they put it out more as like a job interview versus like, or like a position rather than like an audition. So that was kind of interesting too.
It's really funny because your story is very similar to my story, because I wanted to do films. Like, I went to film school, right? And I wanted to create films, and I wanted to write, and I wanted to direct. And because I went to film school, I learned all those things: cinematography, editing, writing. Like, I was obviously a huge fan of film, and I wouldn't say I had an encyclopedic knowledge at that time, but I definitely knew a lot about film. When I worked for a casting director, it was because it was my knowledge previously all built up together. So your story is very, very similar, because we were both kind of like a jack of all trades. Like, we had so many like advanced skills in other areas that led us to ultimately like an area that we had no idea where we were going, basically.
Yeah, no, yeah. And I feel like that's something that like I've noticed when I talk to aspiring creators or aspiring like actors, from the past, like when I've spoken to them, I've noticed that like my perspective has really changed, in the sense that the advice I would give them is like, keep your doors open, say yes to everything, like you don't know where things are going to lead you. And I was always really stubborn. Like for a long time in my life, I was like, I mapped out like, this is how I'm going to find success. This is how I'm going to break into the industry. I'm going to follow this path, and I will get there if I just stick on that path. And I realized like, no, I'm so glad I didn't, because it would have like not opened the doors to where I am today. And I feel like where I am today is at such a good place. It's just, it's a great place to be in. So yeah.
You have no idea how what's going to lead to different opportunities, different things. Like, you're right. You have to stay open to whatever comes your way, because you have no idea who you're going to meet, like what the job's going to entail. Like, ultimately, you can be really surprised with where things are go. Like, lots of people have a traditional mindset of like, I think, and that's fine. Like, I completely get it. Like, I think we all have like an idea of, right, okay, I'm going to go through like my career this way, but then you have no idea really where it's going to go.
No.
That's so cool. I really like your story of like, yeah. So when you blew up on social media, and like when you started creating this content, what sort of content were you creating, and what sort of things were you learning at that time by actually doing it?
Yeah, I think oh man, it's a combination of a few things, but the type of content that we make, specifically like Smile Squad, what we do is we make really relatable content. So we're a sketch comedy page, but everything is based off of like shareability. It's based off of like, will people resonate and relate to it? Because we've noticed like the way things go viral is like people, it's like a club, like, oh, I relate to it. Everybody finds this funny. So there has to be a certain layer of like that relatableness. And so I think that's the biggest takeaway I've learned that has completely shifted the way I look at the content I want to make, and like just the way I want to make it is like I have to find that fundamental human element that everybody can relate to, or like very specifically like a targeted, like, what am I trying to do with this piece of content? What is the story I'm trying to tell, but in a way where people could hold on to it? And the easiest way is to find like identities, what it's like to have this type of girlfriend, or like when your girlfriend does this, or like when your guy friends do that. Like those kind of contents I've noticed does really, really well, because everybody can relate to those moments. Everybody has felt those moments before, so they're more likely to share it. And once something gets shared a lot, that's when like the algorithms start to deem it as like a quality piece of content. Like, oh, look at all these people who are sharing it. They all find it funny, or they all find it a certain way. And so that's when it gets pushed more and more and more. Whereas before I was when I entered the realm of social media, I just thought I was like, oh, this is random and funny. Like, oh, that I feel like that's hilarious because it's just so random, or like it's so unexpected. So I was looking at comedy in like a completely different way that now I don't look at it from, because I know like how performance is affected by like shareability and just the way that content is consumed.
Yeah, I completely get like that idea of being able to relate to something is very like TikTok-esque as well. It's like, I feel that like deep in my bones. Like that's something that like rings true. Like, so how do you find that? How do you come up with those ideas or like pieces of content where you're like, this feels so true to me that I have to do it?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess it's a gut instinct, but
Yeah.
sometimes I feel like it's a gut instinct. It's kind of like when you watch like a really good audition tape and you're just like, yeah, this is just good. Like maybe I can't even put my finger on why,
Mm.
and you could break it down, but it's like, okay, from my experience, from everything I've learned, this is good. And so I guess it's kind of like that.
Intuition.
It's intuition. It's just like knowing, and I think it's just experience. But I don't get it right all the time. Like sometimes I'll do something just to do it or experiment. Like I want to fail. I want to put myself in positions where I don't succeed because I'll know why it's not working. I'll know what doesn't make sense. Like I'm never afraid to not post a piece of content because even when I know it's going to be bad, because I'm just like, well, I have this intuition that it's bad. So I'm going to prove to myself that my intuition is right. And I try to figure that out even from like that perspective. But yeah, I don't get it right all the time. Like sometimes I just find something to be a fun trend, and it's like also balancing like TikTok's algorithm of like, okay, I'll just do something because it's trending and it's like a trending thing.
Yeah.
And it doesn't perform well, but it's like I'm trying to jump on a trend because I'm also trying to grow my page. So it's kind of like finding that balance.
Yeah, right. And do you ever suffer from burnout where you're like, oh, I just need to break from all of this? Because I think there's a lot of like it feels like you put pressure on yourself to do really well and to have something perform or not perform, and ultimately it's not really what matters, right?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that every day. Like it's pretty crazy. I feel like I am definitely juggling a lot, especially when I have like 3 or 4 auditions come in. It's like, oh my gosh, like I don't even I don't sometimes I don't have time to make food, or like don't have anything else that I can do besides like here's a checklist of all the things I have to do, and it's just like me going through the process of like doing all of those things, which is great. I think it's great. It's a first world problem. Like, oh my gosh, look at me. I'm
Totally.
so miserable because I'm so busy and succeeding. Like it's such a first world problem to have, but for sure, like I feel like I do get burned out because I do set really high expectations for myself, as you should. Everybody should, I think. So yeah, it's a lot of work. It's definitely a lot. I think people also underestimate how much work goes into
Oh, trust
what
me, I
looks to be
know.
very simple.
Like I'm not even
Yeah.
close. I'm not even like a tenth of your level in what I'm doing in terms of my content, but I myself, having a 9 to 5 job, find it tiring. And like I'm someone who generally
Yeah.
likes to have some space and time to just do nothing. And
Yeah.
that doesn't really exist these
Same.
days.
Yeah, I know, super relatable. Like I'm right there with you.
So with the auditions, how is that going? And how did you, so you've obviously transitioned into acting a bit more and trying to get more like audition kind of things. What's that process
Mhm.
like? What's your manager and agent like? What have you learned basically by doing all these auditions for different casting directors and stuff?
Yeah, wow, I mean there's a lot to like unpack right there as well. Like um
Well, how did you get
uh
started with that like side of things? Like, what was your first audition really like process like?
yeah, my first audition was it was like a few years ago, I think like 4 years ago in San Francisco. Man, I was so nervous. It's actually hilarious like looking back at it. Like I yeah, I think if there's any new actors who's like watching this right now or just like watching you, I think it's like your first few auditions, like you're not gonna do well. Like just don't think it's gonna go well. Like if you think it's gonna be terrible and you know it and you just move on from it, it'll make life so much easier. Like I wish I'd told myself that. But like it's just so funny looking back at like this like commercial non-union audition that like paid like crap. It was like I think it was like in perpetuity or something. So it was already a really bad deal to begin with. And I was just like I just remembered being like so nervous and desperate, like just going into it and like sweating and like when you get really nervous and you choke up on your lines and you just can't even like look at someone in the eyes because you're just like so nervous. because you're being watched. Like that was my process. That was what happened in my audition. And this was after the fact that I took like years of acting. Like I'd been on stage, right? I had like done theater, I had done all those things, but it's like the first time that's like, whoa, look at this sum of money that like back then in my eyes, like 20-year-old me thought was a lot of money, like 700, 800 bucks, right? And I was like, whoa, this is like a lot of money. I could like pay rent with this. And so I was like super nervous. And so it's just like really funny, the progression of that. But yeah, I was like doing a lot of stuff in the Bay Area. So my first taste of like real professional acting was in the Bay Area. It was a lot of commercials, short films, stuff like that. So it wasn't like anything like crazy. But then when I had moved to LA, that was when things started really picking up. And I found my manager and my agent like relatively quickly. And that process of finding them, it was like, I remember like watching a YouTube video on this guy who found his, and he literally just like went on IMDb Pro and like cold emailed like a million gazillion people and like just pitched himself. And like the secret that I feel like I've discovered, if someone was to be watching it again, who's looking for representation, who's like watching this podcast right now, I would say that my tip to them is be very creative. Be a real, fully three-dimensional person when you pitch yourself. Don't just, if it looks like it's copy and pasted, it's over. It's done. Don't do that. Like it should be so targeted. It should sound charming. You should have like you should have so much personality in it. Like I think my subject line for the one that I sent out to people was like, Sam Lee, this age, future teen heartthrob of America. It was like so like, it was just like so hooking and so like outrageously, like the claim was just outrageous. And I just dove into it in detail. And I was really lucky to have had experience in like auditioning before I found my agent, who is really awesome, because my manager had been sending me out to stuff. And I met my manager through like a film festival. So I was really lucky in that sense that like, it goes back to what I was saying earlier about like everything I've done in life, no matter what level, has led me to something, you know? And so I made this like dumb, stupid comedic short film that I played at a film festival, and my manager currently was at the festival and like loved it. Like it was like the one thing that he like held on to this day. He always references like that short film I made that I was acting in. Yeah, I'm not telling this story linear at all.
No, it's fine. No. So
thank
you, manager, and like, so what's the process now of going out for auditions like? Like, what are you learning by going through that process?
Yeah, I guess something that I've like just, it's not even like what I've learned personally, because I'm not gonna lie, like I don't think I'm that experienced. This is really my second year, technically first, because I moved here when the pandemic kind of hit. Like I had been in LA for like 6-7 months, and then the pandemic hit. So I feel super green. But I've like, even my process of getting into acting, I've always been really dorky and nerdy and over prepared everything. So before I even did my first play and my first short film, I read like 7-8 books on acting, like the classics, right? Like Stanislavski, Uta Hagen, Adler, Meisner. Like I read all of these books before I even touched or considered like doing a play. And so all of those things have really like prepped me. And I'm just kind of the same way with like casting and like the audition process. Like I'm obsessed with just like understanding and taking in like experience from people and just sucking and absorbing all of that in before I experience it myself, so that I could fake it. So I could pretend like I know more than I actually do. You know? So it's like when I go into a casting room, I get how to behave because I've watched like 5, 6, 7, 8 hours of YouTube videos on just doing it. I've done casting workshops, you know? All of those things have like really helped me just understand the whole casting process. And so, you know, it's a lot to unpack. Like I'm trying not to make this like a regurgitation of that kind of like the content that I consume. But you know, it's a lot of like just understanding that the role, what they're doing, what you guys do when you cast is so much bigger than your talent, you know, all of that stuff. You guys are trying to, you know, put a piece of the puzzle together, and no matter how good you are as an actor, sometimes you're just not going to be that piece. And so it's just like, it's all about like just doing the best that I can, the best that I'm capable of, and that's good enough. And if I'm being lazy, then I need to recognize that. And if I killed it and I did well, I can't take rejection personally, because there's not much that you could do. And I think the best way to figure out if you've done well is to surround yourself with good people and, get feedback. And usually my manager is more hands-on. And so he sees a lot of the tapes I send in, and he's, done a lot of submissions and has gone through the casting process a lot. So he kind of like knows like, hey, you could be more interesting. You could do more things here, and not be as one note here, just those kinds of things. So
I think it's also really freeing to understand that too. Be like, okay, I am just going to go do my version. And if that's what they're looking for, it's great. And if not, then that's also great, because I'll go and do other things. Like I've got a bunch of other auditions. I got my own content to worry about. Like just letting go basically is super important, because if you start hanging on to things, it's like the easiest way to lose faith in it, right?
Oh man, you're so right. And sometimes it's easier said than done.
Totally.
It's like you get attached to something really quickly, especially if it's like big and you're moving along in it. Like, yeah. But,
yeah, totally. And so you just moved to LA last year? The year before?
Like end of 2019. So around, yeah.
Cool. So any advice for anyone else who's thinking about moving to LA and trying to break it into Hollywood?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Go in with like a 10-year plan. Like go in, like give yourself 10 years. I would say that you need to understand that so much of this industry is just auditioning, and even getting people who make these decisions to know who you are. Like so much of the work and the wins are in private, meaning like they're behind closed doors. They're not glamorous wins. They're not like, oh, you're in the show so everybody sees it. Like I feel like a lot of the steps that are like wins, or like you're heading in the right direction, are the ones that just like it's between you, your team, and the casting, and no one else really knows, So I feel like going in with that mindset of like, give yourself 10 years, 15 years, don't just be there for 2 or 3 years and then if you don't book something, realize that it's not cut out for you. Like if that's the case, then I would say to don't do it, because you're wasting your time and you could probably be much richer and happier doing something else. But if that's, something you really want to do, and that's something that you have a lot of faith in, then go and do it.
Yeah, it's a good mindset, like having a commitment and just realizing that I've got to be patient. Patience is really important.
Super important.
And any practical tips in terms of like moving to LA itself as a city? Like what's it like? Because I've never been. I'm really curious to know what it's like.
Oh yeah. Oh my God, practical tips. Well, don't bring a sweater. Just bring t-shirts. Let's start with that.
Yeah, it's not cold.
No, I'm like drinking so much water. Like every 5 minutes, I'm just chugging down a gulp of water. I don't think I've quite been around like that long, and I think like with pandemic hitting and everything. But from what I've heard and from just like my small amount of experience, is like every win or every like successful next move, I think is directly correlated with your circle, with who like, so if you come to LA, just try to do something every single day. Like try to work on like your career in every single way, even in ways that you don't think is important, like going out with like-minded friends to go and hang out and eat food, or like do a fun thing. Because the more people you get to meet and the more like experiences you have, the more your circle grows, and the more those friendships later on can come back to help you, or just like you just know, like you'll just end up like knowing them. Like say you go to the gym all the time. You start talking to this one dude, and he happens to be like this intern or this like, you know, casting person or like a manager or something like that. Like later on, you could approach that person. That could be your ticket into the door, in the sense that like you could pitch them and you're like, hey, you know, I'm an actor and I'm looking to get repped. Like, do you think I could like talk to you and like, you know, maybe we could build something? Like that's a foot in the door, you know? And I think stuff like that happens all the time around the industry. So I just feel like, setting yourself up to meet as many people as possible is super important. And I have experienced some of that where it's like something falls in place for me on accident that I wasn't even trying to. And I was like, holy crap, this is actually such a like a blessing that I like decided to hang out with you. And now we're talking about this thing that we both want to do. That's like totally like in line with like career.
It's funny because the stories you hear about LA is a lot of the time it's people just talking about the industry, and like you can't go anywhere without people talking and networking, and it kind of gets a bad rep because it's kind of cliche, but it's correct. Like it is about networking and like understanding that, hey, I'm gonna make genuine friendships here that may help or hinder me in the future. Like it's really important to get connected to people because you don't know, like we were talking about earlier, you have no idea where it's going to lead.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I like to see it as like Survivor. Like, have you seen Survivor? Like the reality TV show,
yeah.
or like any kind of reality TV show. It's like everybody has an objective. They come to LA for a reason, you know?
Totally. And that's a good point, because people are moving to LA for a reason, right? They're not just moving there because they want to move there.
Totally. I mean, some people do, but you'll quickly realize
people who don't want to be in the industry, but most of the time, people who they say they want to move to LA is because they want to be in the industry.
Yeah, it's kind of like you guys are all there to compete and to like team up and like win this challenge, and everybody's trying to succeed. But you know, yes, it is a game and you guys are competitive, but alliances and like friendships and personality goes a long way. If you watch some of like the worst Survivor contestants, they're terrible human beings. So it's the same with life, you know, it's the same with in LA. Like just learn to be a good human being, learn to be like a fun, sociable person, like understand what being a good human is, and then strive to be that. And I would say you will be likable, and that goes a long way because people like to hang out and help people they like. So
yeah, and also that's how do you like, when you were saying that, I was thinking like, how do you remain genuine? Like, how do you recognize that in people and go, okay, this person is just trying to like get something from me? And how do you recognize people who are actually genuine, like nice people?
Oh man, the line's blurred. I would say I actually don't really kind of like look at it like that. Like I feel like no matter what, someone is always trying to get something. Like that's just life. And I think for me, the more I come to terms with that, even from people who like want to hit me up, and like, you know, I can tell sometimes they're like, hey, let's shoot content. I really want to like be in some of your videos type of thing. I try to help them. I don't even like if I like them as a person and they're just fun and like nice to me, like I'm like, cool, yeah, like let's do it. Let me find a way to help you. You know, so I don't, because I would feel the same way, because I was once in a position where it's like, oh man, how do I go and like, you know, try and talk to these people and have them help me and climb, you know, the ladder of like success.
Yeah.
So I understand that it's just human nature. And I think if you can like come to terms with that, then you don't really see it as that. And I think things don't rub you the wrong way as much, or at least for me personally. But I guess there are just instances where if someone's overboard with it, it's like, yeah, that's a little bit weird. And like, it kind of like annoys me a little bit. And I think it's all subconscious. Like I personally don't try to like put a finger on it. It's like, oh, if I just feel kind of weird, like I just kind of forget about it. And it's like, oh yeah, that person was kind of weird, whatever. But otherwise it's like, if, you know, they're genuine and they reach out and it's like something, and it, especially when it feels like they know and they understand, then I'm totally like, let's do it. Like if somebody approached me and they were really nice and they were like, hey, here's like this like this like beat sheet of like this funny sketch, and I look at it and it's like, wow, that's super funny and comedic. Let's do it. I want to help you. But if they send me like a 40-page screenplay and they're like, can you shoot this with me and like edit it? I've seen your videos and all that stuff, and they don't know we have like a whole team of editors and stuff that puts it together.
Yeah.
Then it's like, that's not really possible, and I kind of forget about it, you know? So I think it's just like awareness, understanding, and being open to things.
That's a really good mindset, and I think it's really positive. Like, I think the way that you're speaking there makes me think that you're empathetic, and also like you understand people and you're open to, you just want to help, right? I think that's really important. And it's something that I've been learning too, the fact that people just hit me up and ask me about auditions, and I don't care who they are, like I want to help them no matter what. Like, I'm here to help. And when you're creating content, it's easy to get caught up in the like competition, especially for someone like yourself who's creating content that's relatable and you want it to go viral, and like that's kind of your goal. It's not something that I'm looking to do, but it's something that like I would assume that only so many people can go viral, right? You can only have so many viral videos, and something that you could easily get caught up in. So I think your mindset is really great. Like, I think it's admirable, honestly.
Thank you. I mean, I feel like people have to be like, otherwise it's too negative. Like it would suck. Like I feel like, if somebody was really caught up in that, like it would just eat at them. In it, in a lot of ways, it's kind of like dealing with rejection as an actor. You know, if you hold on to it, it sucks. It eats at you.
Yeah.
You feel bad. You feel like you know, but if it's like in acting, you know, if you could cherish the fact that someone was casted for a reason, and that casting team worked really hard to find that right person, and it doesn't happen to be you, it's like you try to be in their shoes, you know, try to understand it from their perspective, and try to celebrate how that person fit that piece of the puzzle. And I guess it's the same with content creation, but I feel like in acting, it's even worse. I personally feel like more people can get their spotlight on social media, and there's more that's up to grabs on social media than it is in acting, because the roles are limited and so many things are outside of your control. And in social media, it's like, yeah, it's outside of your control, but you get a lot of shot at it, you know? You can do a lot if you put in the effort. So, yeah.
You mentioned in your email to your management, the future teenage heartthrob. Was that the email that got them?
Yeah, well, it was the one that got me the clickbait.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's actually such a good way of putting it.
The clickbait email.
Make a clickbait email. Make a clickbait pitch. Get creative. Think outside the box. People are so like, it's so structured these days, you know, like figure out what's working and find a way to make it outside of the box in your own twist on it. And I think people will resonate and appreciate the creativity.
Well, yeah, that was my lead into what is your like plan moving forwards? Like, what do you want to do in the next few years? Like, what are you building to?
It's tough to say. I mean, it goes back to what I was saying earlier about how I have like these three portions. Like, care deeply about what my company, like not my company, but our company and like the company I work for, that brand, that channel is doing. Also my own stuff, and then also like acting career wise, all three of those I value equally. Also my girlfriend. I'm not putting my girlfriend up here as well. So it's more like these four things.
She blends into the content too, right? I've seen her in your videos too.
Yeah, so. She does. That's the goal. That's the goal.
I'm glad you put that qualifier in number 4.
Yes. Oh, that should be first. Tiffany, if you're watching, that's number 1, and everything else is from the bottom here. My bad. Yeah, I think moving forward is just really like finding a way to balance those things, and whatever happens. There's one thing I learned from just even hearing myself talk from earlier. It's like, don't go into something with something that you want to do and feel like that's the only path to take. So for me, it's I can't think of it like that. I can only think of things as, these are the things I care about, that I know I care about, and I'm going to work at all of those things as hard as I can And if one of those things really takes off, then I got to think deeply and hard about, well, how do I disperse my time and how do I capitalize on what's really working? And I think that's all I can do. And it's always an internal conversation. People that I have friends who are like really successful actors who have made a career out of acting and have gotten into social media and blew up on social media. And they have these crises about like, what do I do? Like I have been able to tackle both fields, and both fields I could find a lot of success in. How do I disperse my time? And that's a conflict that's different for everybody. And there's no right answer. There really isn't. You have to just deeply reflect on your own terms and figure out yourself what the answer is.
Totally. It's a personal choice. I think it's, it sounds like you're open to everything at this point. Like you're just going to see where it goes and keep working hard, I guess, keep grinding.
Yeah. I mean, there's like little things here and there that I want to like add to things. Like I really want to start taking martial arts classes again, like just to really have a strong reel and all of that stuff. Like knowing like how Hollywood has moved into like, as cliche as it is, a lot of Asian roles being like martial arts related, which like kind of sucks, but also it's great to have that exposure. It's like, well, to optimize my chances, should really focus on those things. So with social media, building my own brand, there's all those little things that I'm thinking about here and there to contribute to that. Same with everything else. So it's a matter of finding that balance.
Something I've recommended to actors too is to be multi-skilled. Like it doesn't hurt to add strings to your bow, right?
Mm-hmm. Not at all.
Got to have skills. Like it's something you can, it can help you stand out. So
yeah. And just to even add on top of like what you just said right there too, I was just talking to a close acting friend of mine like 3 days ago, and he has like his own business and he is obsessed with acting. But he was like telling me, and it really like I really resonated with it, because I think I was a little bit caught up in my own head about like acting and everything. Like, yes, be an actor and know that acting takes a tremendous amount of work and time and rejection and wastes of time and per se, right? But live a full life at the same time, because you only have one life. And the more you can live a full life and enjoy everything else that's not acting, the less desperate, one, you'll seem, and two, the more happy you'll be. And to be honest, living that full life is only going to bring, there's no cons in terms of like an acting relationship. Like you have to have both. And I think that's absolutely true for everything. Like just
completely agree.
Strings. Yeah.
I completely agree. Having life experience is something that will also inform your performances and also anything you do later on in life too. Like having a well-rounded life. You can't just be one-dimensional. You've got to be as a rounded individual as possible. So I completely agree. Sam, it's been really, really great talking to you. I'm so happy that we finally got to catch up. And if you ever need anything from me, or if you'd like help with anything, don't hesitate to hit me up, all right?
Likewise, just keep creating content, Adam. I'm really enjoying it, and every time I watch it, it's like I'm taking something away for free. I don't have to be in a class. I don't have to do, like, I feel like you're changing the game. Keep doing it.
Oh, great. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
You're pioneering like content on TikTok for acting and casting.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. That's such that's really nice of you to say. Thank you.
Of course. And keep it up.
Thank
awesome.
you. I will. And you keep it up too. You're killing it.
Thank you.
Doing a great job. All right. I'll speak to you soon.
Awesome. Sounds good.
Thanks.
Okay.